All right. I will introduce all of the speakers at once so they can fluidly interchange among themselves. And let me just start with pulling that up on my electronic device, my paperless system. So do you guys have an order in what you want to go?
Sarah, James.
Okay, great. So the first speaker will be Sarah Bailey-Hogarty, and she is a digital storyteller with a curator's eye who brings strong leadership, creativity, and humor to her role as digital producer at Sfmoma. From creative direction to project management, Hogarty delivers exemplary content strategy and media production across web and mobile platforms. She believes in cursing and unicorns.
I won't curse today.
Following Sarah will be James Provenza, who's the senior designer at Sfmoma Design Studio. He recently led the visual design for the new sfmoma.org site as part of a major rebrand for the institution, which has been recognized both nationally and internationally. He loves basketball and is a Warriors season ticket holder. And our last speaker for this round is Erin Fleming. Erin is the associate content producer at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art as well. They're all three from Sfmoma. She spearheaded the launch of the museum's new podcast, Raw Material. Erin also produces a weekly radio show featuring long-lost experimental music by women from the 60s and 80s on Radio Valencia. Woo! I got to talk to you about Joan LaBarbera after this. Oh, yeah. Okay. She is an enthusiast of Twin Peaks, my new best friend, and tiki bars. Oh. Find her on Twitter and Instagram at Erin Eyesore, all one word, Erin Eyesore. Okay. And without further ado, I don't know if there's any more seats beside. Oh, there's another couple seats over here if people want to take them. I'm going to hand it off to you, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. It's great to see you all here. So we're going to talk about our human-centered approach to the new Sfmoma website. We also submitted this before we knew what the theme was, so that was no nepotism, presumably. During Sfmoma's 3-year closure, traffic to sfmoma.org remained surprisingly strong. Our analytics indicated that visitors to the previous iteration of our site were coming to watch videos, maybe check out Artscope, which was our interactive tool for exploring the online collection, and also potentially to do research. So it was clear to us that even in the absence of the need to plan a visit or purchase a ticket, our website was drawing audiences whose interests were content-driven. While we were closed, Sfmoma also totally overhauled our brand platform and our tone and voice. Our new approach would be welcoming, non-authoritative, and most importantly, human. So with the website data in hand, along with our new brand platform, we began the research and discovery phase for the redesign and relaunch of the new sfmoma.org, which necessarily drew upon a human-focused approach. To start, we convened a wide breadth of stakeholders from virtually every department within the museum to workshop together our hopes and dreams for the new site. Throughout the workshop, we gathered and prioritized and reprioritized and gathered and prioritized goals for the new website. After careful discussion and evaluation, we came to an agreement that our first and foremost priority should be to deliver distinctive online experiences to our audiences. Now, as any of you who may have gone through a web redesign know, what happens in the workshop environment isn't always what's represented in the final executive report, which is why the final report defines our website's #1 reason for being as this. You can read that for yourself. So how are we able to coalesce our hopes and dreams for a human-focused goal with the decidedly less sexy, but nonetheless important fiscally focused goals? Well, after this report was issued, we reconvened a group of our executive team for a second round of workshops. And this team included senior staff as well as our 3 deputy directors. And one of the key exercises that we did focused on the role of the homepage, and it really served to solidify our overall goals for the mission and approach for the new sfmoma.org as a whole. So using the homepage as an example, we asked everyone in the room to pinpoint, literally, on a triangle where they felt the visitor's deepest engagement point would lie. So you can see the majority of the group recognized that storytelling provides the best hook for visitors onto the homepage and therefore into the site as a whole. So we later came to see this triangle really as more of a funnel, with storytelling and programming drawing visitors in and leading them to conversion, whether that was purchasing a membership or a ticket or maybe a trip to the museum online store. So with this renewed and reiterated focus on the audience and the lure of rich narrative content, we moved forward, and the human-focused approach drove everything from the information architecture to the content. One of the most obvious examples of this shift can be seen here directly in the IA. So the three defining sections of the new website listed as the main menu represent what people do, what people make, and what people say or talk about. You'll see that we changed our collection to Artisan Artworks. Not only does this new name emphasize the makers or the humans behind the artworks, it allows us to include artists whose artwork is not necessarily represented in our collection on the site, but with whom we have really deep, engaging, and substantive relationships, like performance artists or public practice artists. Exhibition and events, as you can imagine, is pretty much still a calendar listing, although very image-rich and heavy. But projects and perspectives is an entirely new content publishing platform that did not exist previously. So while we were doing the research and discovery across the museum, the constant refrain from our colleagues was, we really need a place to tell our story, whether that story was the insider details of the development of an exhibition or the development of a website. And although, for all intents and purposes, this is our institutional blog, the tone and voice with which we choose to tell these stories is markedly different from the authoritative tone traditionally used by many museums. Rather than the voice of the god/curator, we develop all of our content with the voice of that elusive dinner party table mate, that one who is just like brimming over with enthusiasm and excitement to tell you about this weird, new, awesome story or experience that they've had because they just can't afford not to. And like any titillating dinner party conversation, we provide deeper channels for further discussion with closely related content. So this is what we call a theme, one of our content themes. So on our old site, the content relationships were broadly linked so that every page was covered from end to end with hyperlinks, which could take you to an artist interview featuring the artist you just read about, but it could also take you to a video of a 4-person panel discussion that talked about this artist at about minute 57. So this is our attempt to mitigate what we call the tyranny of the related. And we now subscribe to a model we lovingly call the scroll of desperation, where the content immediately below the end of an article or a video is really very closely related, even featured perhaps in the above content. And the further you scroll down, the further afield the content goes, maybe taking you back to the original landing page from which you came. So by creating this closely related content, we're catering to our users' interests, and this facilitates their curiosity by serving them the next logical path for exploration. And in our analytics, we're seeing that nearly 40% of users who read an article on sfmoma.org go on to read another article. And with over 90,000 page views of our articles, we feel pretty proud about that. Additionally, we're seeing over 13% of users going directly from projects and perspectives to ticketing. And then of that segment, 35% go on to actually purchase a ticket. So we are seeing this storytelling to conversion funnel actually in action on our website. Oh, here's my last page. So how do we deliver all of this content? How do we deliver all this human-facing content? We basically are going to let James tell you about how the design facilitates and supports this philosophy, and then Erin will actually get you guys into some of the really juicy content that we produce within this framework as well.
Hey guys, is that good? All right. So, as Sarah pointed out, one of the main goals we had when redesigning the site was to create a distinctive online experience. And we wanted this experience to be parallel to, but inherently different than visiting the museum itself. And to do this, we had to have a really good understanding of how we wanted people to interact with our site. We knew we wanted it to be welcoming and open, but we also needed a way to provide various types of rich content and offer multiple paths through the site without being overwhelming. And in previous iterations of the site, we had treated the homepage almost as a dumping ground for content, trying to cram as much content kind of above the fold as possible. And while this kind of almost newspaper-like approach, may have pleased people in various departments, it didn't speak to the welcoming and open approach to content that we were moving towards. Additionally, we had learned through analytics that the majority of our visitors weren't actually arriving at our site through the homepage. They were arriving deeper in the site from various searches for specific artists or exhibitions. So with that in mind, we asked ourselves, what is the purpose of our homepage? One second. So our new visual identity was pretty easily translated into the digital space, and the homepage became a cinematic portal to the contents of the website and the museum. Large moving images provoke you to explore further. So this is, it's really just eye candy and introducing you to the brand with the intention of getting you to go further into the site. So as Sarah was talking about with the menu, this is another good example of this approach. So rather than breaking up the navigation of the site into our internal departmental structure, we broke it up into, we were able to distill it down into two key categories, which is the menu for exploring, which is what you see with exhibitions and events, Artisan Artworks, and projects and perspectives, and a navigation for doing, if you come to buy tickets or you want to plan a visit or become a member. On the artwork pages, we wanted the images to be as large as possible, which seems obvious, but as anyone who works at a museum knows, that's not always the easiest thing to get approved. But for the new site, our collections division took the stance that any artwork images included in the online collection fall under fair use. And this really cleared the path for us to design these pages the way that we envisioned them. So we made the artwork images responsive to the size of the browser. So whatever size you're looking at, this image is always extending from top to bottom, however large you have it. And this gives you the opportunity to see the artwork larger than previously possible online. And in some cases, like this one, you're even able to zoom in closer to the artwork on the website than you can get to it in person at the museum. And so this really kind of speaks to the idea that we were talking about earlier of creating a distinct online experience that is parallel to being at the museum, but it's different than visiting in person. for artworks where we do have deeper content, we've introduced the use of in-page navigation. So you can easily go back to the artwork image, or as you continue to scroll down, you can read an overview, or if you want to go to an essay, there's a call out for an essay that's about this specific piece. So, working at a modern art museum, it's pretty easy to talk about all of this amazing imagery and that we have at our disposal as designers and content makers. And in a lot of ways, I certainly felt that the images do a lot of the work for you. So that is a good thing. But the fact of the matter is that it's really only part of what we have to offer at Sfmoma. And we wanted our website to be a vehicle not only for artworks and exhibitions, but for the stories surrounding those artworks and the people that create them and love them. And that brings us to the design of the projects and perspectives portion of the site. And unlike a lot of the other pages on the website, which are right up front, really big, sexy images, the article pages preference text and a very welcoming and approachable reading experience. So we spent a lot of time, designing actually a custom font as part of our rebrand that we felt would read very well in long form text, and we've really kind of optimized the column width so that it's very easy to read, and the text is large enough that you're not having to get super close to your screen in order to read the article. And when we do have tangential content to offer, we're doing so through the use of marginalia, which is content that appears and disappears in the margin of the page, and stays static while its content is related to what you're reading. So rather than kind of blindly hyperlinking in line in the text, we're actually having these related pages or additional information come up as you're scrolling through and reading something that is relevant to that piece of marginalia.
How does that work on mobile?
No marginalia on mobile.
It groups it at the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah. Scroll all the way down.
So the featured in this article is all of that content that appeared in the margins, and this is talking about getting back to the scroll of desperation, where this is kind of the most related to the content on that page, as it's actually part of the page, and then as you go down, you get less and less related, but it's still there for a reason. I'm trying to kind of speeding through this because I know we're limited on time. But so this is just a small sampling of the humanistic approach we took to designing this site, and you can read more about it, about the design of the website and the rebrand itself in the projects and perspectives section of our website. And now I'm going to let Erin talk about how some of the actual content is produced under this approach.
Thank you. Oh, I'm tall. Okay, so like James said, I'm going to talk about how this philosophy of a human-centered museum actually plays out in our approach to content production, and I'm going to show you guys specifically our artist interview series. It's a video series that we've been producing since the mid-90s. And here is a sampling of a lot of our, when I say older videos, they look like they're from the 90s, but this is more like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's easy to notice that they're all just like talking heads with a gray background, not very pleasing. And if you compare it to our more recent videos, this reflects the changes that we've made. So I'll just talk about some of those choices that we made. But you can, kind of right off the bat see there's like more color, light-filled, interesting locations. There's a guy hanging out in the Sierras, etc. And one thing I do want to say about this space too, and Sarah touched on this a little bit, is I think it's really special that we have these artist interviews as a space where we can just show more diverse representations of the artists that we have relationships with, and perhaps more than what is on the Sfmoma walls, which is predominantly white males of a certain age. So that's cool to me. Anyway, so the first thing that we did was a complete overhaul of all of our titling and web copy. And the main thing there was that we did this with this idea in mind that we should never assume any prior knowledge with our audiences. We had so many titles for videos that were like John DeVola on his Gigapan series, and John DeVola on his Zuma project. And I was like, Giga, Zuma, I don't know what's going on. And so then we just, we're like, why don't we just call it John DeVola photographing abandoned houses? We all know what that is. That's cool. So, just stop mentioning artwork titles, describe what's going on so you can actually appeal to a wider audience, that kind of thing. So how do I get out of this? Man. Okay, cool. And then I'm gonna show a couple of videos. I'm gonna show one on mute while I talk, just because it's like you can get a visual. Is this on mute? No, it wasn't. So one of the first things that we did, a lot of these choices happen in pre-production, but one of the first things is that we now present almost all of our artist interview videos are in the artists' homes or studios or them working in the field. So off the bat, that's just way more interesting, and like visually it's a lot better, but it provides an additional layer of context for audiences, and it's also gotten us trips to go to like Japan and Berlin and New York, and so it's a good excuse for that too. And also artists are way more comfortable, and they're going to speak more naturally, and they're going to show us really cool things like all of their works in progress and their archives and like their pets and their clothing. So it just makes it like for that much more interesting. The other thing, this is like my kind of like key that I love, is highlighting artists' personalities. And so that starts with the questions that we ask. We used to, a lot of times it would be like a curator is just asking about specific works in Sfmoma's collection. And it's really about like importance to art history and importance to the museum's archive. And so now we're definitely asking about the artist's broader practice and asking about their lives, and some really casual questions sometimes. And then our choices in post-production follow that too. So I'm going to play a short audio clip just at the beginning of this video. Wait, I should turn this one off. And I thought I was like going to give the curator a heart attack when I just said, hi, I made this video, and I started it with this. This is a sculptor from, well, I don't know if he's a sculptor actually, from San Francisco named Ron Nagel. And one of the things I really like to do is anytime an artist jokes or like has an outtake or sings a song or swears, I'm like, that's going in a video. So just a couple seconds of this.
They're always trying to tiptoe around the classification. Are you a ceramicist? Are you a potter? Are you a ceramic sculptor? I hate that term more than any of them, ceramic sculptor. I don't know, man. I just make shit. They're objects. I don't know. I'm reluctant to call them sculpture.
We're not so precious about it anymore. But that's who Ron Nagel is. He doesn't know. He's like, I just make shit. So, again, though, we assume no prior knowledge in our videos. We totally de-emphasize art talk things, so like really esoteric discussions about process or obscure art historical references, or basically anything that's going to be confusing or pretentious sounding. Obviously, we keep all of that in our archive, and it's always available for researchers and this and that, just not part of the interpretive strategy now. So the very last thing that I wanted to show is this last one, Anthony Hernandez. The last thing is that none of this would be possible without, the way that we do this is we just form really close and long-term now partnerships with local creatives, which is pretty easy to do in San Francisco. But they're really, we find like really talented and often really young filmmakers and look at it as a creative partnership with them and think about making mini documentaries about artists instead of artist interview video clips. And music is a big part of it. Like the Ron Nagel video, that was really cheesy lounge music because that was from his solo album from the 70s. And I was like, we have to include that. And like, you know, if it's quirky electro music or punk rock, you know, we're not going to shy away. If that's the right vibe for the video, then that's what it should be. And everything about these is a lot more cinematic than what we used to do. It's, like I said, it's about making a movie. And then the other really cool part about this is when we work with local filmmakers, after a while, I've had a couple tell me, like, I feel like I just got a degree in art history from working with you guys. And they're like, thank you, that's amazing. So we're really like creating this network of art literate producers and videographers and creatives. So it's kind of a win-win of we get these really high quality creative mini movies, and I feel like it builds up our community too. So. We both. Oh, she asked, when we go abroad, do we take people with us or do we find local filmmakers there? And the answer is both. We've done it both ways. Yeah. Okay, I think the last thing I need to do is go to that slide. Thank you. Yeah, it's like 3:45, sorry.
Burning question.
Just yell it out, guys. No. All right, cool.
Everybody wants coffee?
I wanted to ask you about rights. So I'm assuming that a lot of these artists that do some videos with you guys have long-term relationships.
Yeah.
But there's artists who are more shy. How do you approach doing this kind of work with them? You know, there's artists that are much more, they like a much more controlled environment, right?
Yeah, we don't let them have any say. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we work with them. You know, there's people who say, oh, I don't like the close-up on this. And yeah, we'll definitely work with people. And we follow a fair use. We're very, very liberal with our fair use policy for Sfmoma videos. We pull fun stuff off of YouTube all the time. And but yeah, we address those concerns.
They also take the fair use stance for the artist interviews because they're purely educational.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah.